Okay, thanks a lot for the invitation. Thanks to Robert. So, yes, I have different roles. So the main one is that I'm leading a research lab in Italy, in Trento. That is called Mobile and Social Computing, and it's in Fondazione Bruno Lepri. And then I'm still visiting professor in MIT Media Lab, and I'm also head of research of an NGO that is called Datapop. It is a common effort of MIT Media Lab and Harvard University to use big data in developing countries. So I will show some of the things that we are doing with Datapop Online. So I will try to give to you some positive, very positive side on the usage of AI. Yesterday there were several talks that were more concentrated on the risk and the critics. Also in this talk I will describe the risk and the critics, and I will propose some way to overcome. But there are also things that need to be highlighted, is how this technology can be used to solve and to give contribution in terms of knowledge to different challenges. So what is happening right now is that we live in our life. We leave behind us a lot of digital breadcrumbs. We will do using our mobile phone, using credit card transactions, using social media, and all the digitalization of society means that for the first time we can collect very fine-grained data about human behavior. For giving an example, when you use a mobile phone, a telco, a telecommunication company, can access your network of communication and network of interaction from the log of the text messages and the log of the call. And they can also access and reconstruct the mobility pattern that you have in a city, so your habits, and when you wake up, when you leave your house, and when you move to your work place, and when you come back, when you go to a third place, enjoying the life in the pub or whatever. Because so every time you do some action, like you do a call or you send an SMS, or that is the things that usually you do a lot of times, you control and you check your mail, these information are connected with the cell tower, and the cell tower localizes it. So all this information can be used for some interesting things. So this is one of the first work that was done by a former colleague in MIT, Nathan Eagle, that show how you can build, using the data that a telco has, you can build a network of communication interaction, and you can show that a social and spatial network diversity, if a place is connected to more diverse place, this place is also a richer place. So the diversity is associated, there is not a causal way of understanding this phenomenon here, but the diversity of interaction and diversity of connection for a place is associated with higher economic development of the place. This was done for all UK. The same things were done also at the individual level, so we show that if you have a more diverse interaction in your life, you tend to be richer, and also you get less trouble in terms of economic trouble and whatever, and this is a way that can be used, and some of these things are starting to be used by banks, for example, to enrich their own information and to build financial well-being metrics that can decide about your loan, about if you are credit worth or not, and whatever. For example, we use very simple mobility patterns that are diversity, loyalty, regularity, and we extract this information from the places where you were buying things. So we have access to credit card transactions from several banks around Europe and US. Looking at this pattern, we were able to understand your financial risk. Another study that we've done, and this is an ongoing project that we are doing in several cities, was about crime, understanding the role that urban environments and the people present in a given neighborhood have in lowering the crime of the neighborhood. So we start from theory, so we start from two opposing theories. The one by Jane Jacobs about the Hyson Street principle, that if you have a sense of community in a place, you have lower crime, you have low crime. And the other one is the defensible space theory that say instead the opposite. So you need to have a place where there are only residents, where there is no mixing, because otherwise you have more possibility of having attack and also possible victims, so you have more crime. So what we did in an effort with Telefonica and MIT is that we get data from Telefonica, so we have for each neighborhood, each census area of London, we have the amount of people present and flowing in that area in each 6 minutes of 1 month of London life. And also we have this data not only about the amount of people, but which was the mixing in terms of gender, which was the mixing in terms of age range, which was the mixing in terms of resident against tourist or commuting people and income. And what we found is that among the two theories, the one that works better is the one of Jane Jacobs. So when we have a mixing and when we have a place that has a high diversity of functions, so attract different people in and attract people all the time, all the day, so we have lower crime, not higher crime. This effort became a very large one. So we did another study in several cities, in Boston, in Bogota, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, where we use not only the information about the people in a place, so the mobility flow, but we use also the information about the urban characteristics, so the urban form of a place. So we take the diversity condition of Jane Jacobs, so that you need to have a mixing of usage in a place, you need to have small blocks, so you need to have something very similar to Greenwich Village. That was the inspiration for her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. And if you have this condition, the neighborhood is always a vital neighborhood where you have pedestrians all the time. And we tried to quantify and to look if this was true. We did for several Italian cities, but we also use to understand how this is connected with crime. What we found is that there is not for crime a sort of universal law, so not a model that fits everything. So the kind of structure you have of the urban form is very different in different kinds of society. In your left you have a picture of one Jane Jacobs type of neighborhood in Bogota, and in the other picture you have a Jane Jacobs type of neighborhood in Boston. And the level of crime and the way how the neighborhood is used by the community is totally different. So right now we are going further with this project. We are working with the government of Colombia to do the same things for the six major cities in Colombia, Bogota, Medellin, Barranquilla, Cali, and also to understand which are the interventions that urban planner and also policymaker need to do. So, for example, how they need to redesign the connection between the neighborhood to force a little bit to have a mixing of people, so to do not have neighborhoods that are completely isolated like it was for some of the Medellin neighborhoods that have high crime in in the past. This is another project that we did in the Middle East country. It was done by my colleague in MIT Media Lab, and this is what they did, is that they have a mobile phone data, and they have the problem from the government to understand which are the condition and the factor that make more possible for a person that loses job to find another job. So there are some people that when they lose the job are very easily able to find another job, and other people not. So which are the differences between these two different type of people? So in this kind of country, the first things that matter is the surname. Then that is not a good news. Then doesn't matter at all, or matter very few, the training that the government does in terms of English skill, in terms of IT skill, and the things that instead count is the network of interaction you have. So we work a little bit as a sort of animal. When we got in trouble, we reduce the number of interaction and the number of things that we explore. But this is a way to stay in trouble and not to exit from the trouble. So having more diversity and interacting more is a way to exit from the trouble. This is a work that we are doing for different continents. So we are looking at the segregation in the urban environment and in the online spaces. So we start from the segregation in terms of residential segregation, where the people live. Then we look at behavioral segregation. We have credit card transaction data for Mexico, for Turkey, for US, and we look where the people go to do the expenses, where they go to shop. And then we look also which are the people that are mentioned by other people in Twitter. So we build the same network in the online space. What we found is that the behavioral segregation is higher than the residential. So we segregate more when we behave than looking at where we live. And also the online is higher than the offline. So it seems something like when we have less cost in our behavior, like we have in the online world. There is no cost in deciding who I will mention on Twitter, while there is a cost in deciding where I will go to buy things, because maybe I don't have enough money to go to that specific shop. But when we reduce the cost, we increase the segregation. So there is this effect in the behavior of the people, with a tendency of looking for homophily that makes people more segregated when they have less cost in their behavior. And this is bad. So this is a study that we've done. We are doing right now using a very unique data set. So we have data from a telecommunication company, a Turkish telecommunication company, where we have the mobility pattern of the Syrian refugees and the mobility pattern of the Turkish people, the Turkish citizens. And what we show is that, so there is this sort of storytelling in Turkey, but in a lot of countries, that immigrants or refugees bring health risk and whatever. So there is a very different rate in terms of measles fascination between the Turkish people that is very high. It's higher than Italy, extremely higher than Italy. And for example, Syria, where with the war they had a decrease. What our model and our simulation with the real data show is that if you have social integration, there is no risk. If you segregate people, if you let refugees live only in refugees camp in specific part of the Turkish country, you have higher risk. Because what happens is that you have an explosion of the epidemics in the place, and then the probability that one of the Turkish person gets the infection is high. So if you mix people, that is the lowest map, there is no risk for everyone. There is no risk for Turkish people, there is no risk for Syrian people, if you have and you enforce social integration. If you don't have such an integration, the risk is very high. This is another work that did a colleague in ATH and in Stanford, where they use artificial intelligence and algorithm to try to understand which is the best way to place the refugees in United States and Switzerland to give them, based on the skill they have, more possibility of being employed. So I think I can a little bit on this one. So this is again a project that we did in cities. So using some of the neural network that yesterday Chris was describing in the history of artificial intelligence. So what we did in a project with Cesar Hidalgo from MIT was looking which are the places that are perceived as unsafe in different cities. We have a big data set that was collected with crowdsourcing method, asking to people to judge two different Google Street View images to say which is the one that is perceived as more unsafe. Then with the computer vision algorithm we were able to explore these things for all the streets in Rome and all the streets in Milan. And we did two different things. One, we look at if a place is perceived as unsafe, which kind of people is around, looking at a mobile phone. So there are more female, more male, more young people, more elder people and whatever. And we found that, for example, there are associations between our places perceived and the type of people that spend the day there. And the other things that we were able, only with an automatic way, obscuring some part of the images, to understand which are the urban characteristics that make a place perceived as safe. For example, we found that the windows facing the street are very important to perceive a place as safe. That is very close to the theory of Eisen Street of James Jacobson and natural surveillance. So all these things that I showed to you are method for starting to use the big data and the machine learning technique to quantify information about human behavior and to use for different kind of societal challenges. There was this effort that was run by the former secretary in the United Nations and Sandy Penton, that is one of the persons that I'm working with, and several of these projects are done with him, was one of the members, together with Enrico Giovannini, to establish a way of using big data to control and to check the progress in the Sustainable Development Goals. But there are also positive. So as I was showing, there are positive aspects, but there are also possible negative aspects. Some years ago, we wrote a position paper that was called Battling the Tyranny of Data. More than the tyranny of data is a sort of tyranny of algorithmic decision making. And we were inspired by this book by Bill Esterly, that is an NYU professor in economics, that was looking at the tyranny of experts. So he was criticizing a little bit the way how World Bank and other organizations work in the developing country, where they have a technocratic approach. They think to have the solution and they don't take too much in consideration the right of the community where they apply their solution. And the problem is that maybe the algorithm approach can enforce a little bit this kind of technocratic dream and view. So we list some of the problems that we found. So for example, the computational violation of privacy, the lack of transparency in the algorithmic decision making, the risk of discrimination that were also raised yesterday from one of the panelists. For example, this are some of the work about the risk of privacy. This is the second one is a very interesting work that was done by one of my former colleagues in MIT that show how much we are unique in a crowd. So using the data from a telecommunication company or from a bank, only looking at 3 points or 3 or 4 spatial temporal points, we can identify a unique trace. This doesn't mean that we can identify that this guy is Bruno Lepri, but we can identify that this guy is always the same guy. And then it's very easy having some external data that say this guy is Bruno Lepri, because so there are only few people that does the same things all the day. And the other thing is that we are more routinary than how much we think we are. Another thing that was shown by Michael Kosinski in Stanford that was also connected with all the Cambridge Analytica things, because so some of his study were also a little bit an inspiration of this effort by Cambridge Analytica, is that from data like the Facebook likes or the Facebook profile picture, this is a work that we did, my group did together with Michael Kosinski some years ago, we can understand and we can infer the personality trait of a person from the Facebook profile picture and from the likes. So in the Facebook profile picture there is nothing close to the Lombroso dream, so we are not considering the visual aspect of a person, but there are things like how many people you have in a picture, the color of the picture, if the picture is indoor or outdoor, and other things that are very connected with your personality. Another thing was other problem was showing this nice book by Katie O'Neill, Weapons of Math Distraction, where she showed the risk of discrimination and prejudice that you have in the bias in the data. And so we propose in this position paper some of the way, and these are some of the way we are working to start to use these things, avoiding or reducing the risk. So the first thing is that so we are enforcing this idea of having user-centric data ownership. So the data need to be back to the people, and they should control what you can infer from the information that we have. Then we need to have algorithmic fairness and algorithmic accountability. And we need to have, before really using these things, a living level where we can experiment the policy. So the idea is having more evidence-based policy. So this is one, for example, of the things that we did with this idea of having back the data to the people. We ran a study where we really think to a personal data market. So we asked people with the set of auction, we were collecting all the data we can collect from these 300 people from mobile phone, and we asked to give monetary valuation and to say how much they will ask to sell their own personal data. And we found interesting things but also bias. So the first interesting things that we found is that the median daily valuation in terms of euro is €2. So if people sell €2 for each piece of information, Facebook is packed up in 1 second. So there is no any problem of having Facebook, because so it doesn't exist anymore. So if you ask to pay for each piece of information €2 to each single person. The other interesting thing is that, again, so there is this dream in America that you can control everything about your data, but you need help to control your data, because so the graphics show that we are very able to understand the risk of relocation data. So we will sell with a lot of asking a lot of money in the location data, because we don't want to be tracked. But the same doesn't happen for the media. And from the media I can understand without any problem the political orientation of the person, the sexual orientation of the person. So I risk how much is risky relocation data. So I will close with this big project that we are doing together with Orange, Telefonica, MIT, Harvard, Imperial College in particular. So that is building this platform where we try to make possible sharing information without sharing raw data. The project is called OPAL, Open Algorithm, so the idea is that we never let the data came out from company places, but we bring the algorithm to the data. So this project has two different things that for me are disruptive. One is in terms of using for government and policy this kind of information. We are testing in Colombia, we are testing in Senegal. But the other thing is that is disrupting a little bit the problem that we have right now. So we have very few actors that have a lot of data, and a lot of companies, small, medium enterprises and actors, that they don't have anything. And they cannot run anything. So there are NGO activists or small, medium enterprises that can have idea, insight, business, whatever from this data, but they cannot really access. The control is to Facebook, Google, and whatever. So the idea is create this market, to try to a little bit compose how is it going right now with technology, where you have few platforms and few actors and everything. And this is my final thing. So the idea is that we need to think a little bit in the future to this idea of having human AI ecologists, where AI system and human beings will work and interact together. There are things that are important from the side of science. So the artificial intelligence like we have right now is not so intelligent. It's very performative, but it's not so intelligent how some of the people think. And so there are other approaches from collective intelligence, complex system, physics, and everything that can bring there to make more intelligent the things, and in particular to bring one aspect that artificial intelligence has not, that is social intelligence. And the other things are all the ethical challenges and the political and policy challenges that maybe we will discuss in the plan. Thank you.
Questions? With such a wide subject, which is relating culture to policy making and changing realities.
I just have a short question to Carmen. Carmen, you showed, unfortunately, it goes very quickly, as it must, and so it was difficult to get the full picture there. But I was touched, of course, by when you said that Romania was somehow behind. And at the same time, my experience after nearly 2 years here in Timișoara is that Romania also has potentially is a bit forward in the meaning that the old definition of culture remains, but is obviously, kind of hasn't developed any further. And there's this whole potential that exists. And when you show me the map there, I'm a little bit concerned about the geographic distribution, not of the cultural institutions, but potentially. So my question is, to go back to it, it's not about the institutions that you have defined, at least in those maps I'm looking at now. Is there any research being done about other initiatives, community-based initiatives, independent initiatives which do not have spaces, which do not have money, which do not have any sustainable program in any of the cities, certainly not in this city and certainly not from the Ministry of Culture, but which actually is there any way of counting that, of analyzing that? Thank you.
Yes, I started this as well because 2 years ago we conducted research on the white paper of cultural creative sector and their economic impact in Romania. And we discovered some activities and we're mapping that as well. But there are still areas, blank spots on the map, on the Romanian's map. And we try to to convince the local authorities to start doing cultural actions there. But this is something we have to do together with the Ministry of Culture, because they keep coming back to the Ministry of Culture saying that they have no money to do that. And they spend all the money for infrastructure, for education and health, which we know they don't. So yes, it is a big problem. And we do have some studies on cultural activity itself, and we're trying to map it, and we will make it publicly as soon as possible.
I have a question for Bruno. You mentioned something very interesting, the idea of giving people back the ownership of their own data. Do you think this will need some step before actually giving back the ownership of data, like raising awareness of the importance of this data, sort of capacity building about how to manage the data, why we should own them? I mean, a sort of, let's say, training before we actually get to know exactly what does it mean to own our own data.
Yes. So I'm a little bit less optimistic of the dream and version that, particularly in the US, you are giving back the data and we solve everything. Also, because there is this idea that human beings are able to, in a rational way, to take decision of everything that's related to that. But on the other side, I think that there are things that are starting to give us awareness of all the Cambridge Analytica scandal. My point is more interesting really on the kind of feeling that should change in the people of the role of their data. So I'm not really sure that Cambridge Analytica helped in any sense the victory of Trump. I know how that technology works, and I'm not sure that have any role in it. But I think that was very important for understanding how much easy it was for anyone getting data on Facebook that we were not considering that we are using. On the other side, so the scandal is taking a direction that is risky. I think cultural people or activists should say this. So the solution is that now the data are in control only for Facebook. So they make more limits to access their own data. That makes sense, being a company, so they were really shocked by the scandal. But this is a problem because before it was a sort of Far West, but you have a lot of different possible Cambridge Analytica. Anyone with no money can build a Cambridge Analytica in 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Now you have only one entity that controls everything and decide who can get or not get the data. So I think that some of these scandals, some of other things can start to raise the awareness. On the other side, I think also that in the evolution of the things, or if you can have as commons or as a market, you will have. So my idea is that you should at some point need to have the same things that you have for the job market. You have union trade for the job market, or you don't have union trade for data. So it should be the same. No? So that will be.
Okay, I will be really short. This may seem impractical or far-fetched. However, I will just say this. So for anyone, if we see data as a thing or as a process, this might have a key for being okay with your life, your data. This whole problematic. That is it. I mean, I don't want to go into detail. Sorry for being philosophical or anything, but I do believe this holds some kind of key. I mean, this is outside of administrative, informational methodologies. It's just living, basically. But I think this is important. I mean, if you identify with your data, I mean, you've generated your data, your brain, your life, you're not your data. I mean, owning data, not owning it, I'm just problematizing, I'm just opening a little conceptual door here, but I think it's important, so thank you. I mean...
And what's your question?
Well, my question is not only data, but like we are here at an arts thing that, like Marcel Duchamp says, there's no solution because there's no problem, you know? I mean, somehow. I mean, this, okay, I'm not going to go further into this, maybe, but there's no question. I really needed to say this, forgive me. I mean, this was
Anybody a question? Right there.
Sorry.
But I think that the question there is, in the sense that, so it depends philosophically what do you think a data is. So if you think that the data is a product of your work or of your life, this is something that you can monetize. If the data is your life, this is something that you don't monetize. So there are perspectives that are totally different to the one that I show. So for example, Luciano Floridi, that is a philosopher, doesn't think that you can monetize data because data are our identity, so you cannot monetize your identity. So it's a different perspective.
How can culture shape societies that are influenced by algorithms, by the digital world? We have various programs for that. I see that the Future of Europe, Juncker published last year, I think, mentions those topics, mentions the digital shift, mentions what a change of communication does to European societies. And then when I look at the programs that are there for culture, then we know that culture and education is one of the things that should help European societies to be cohesive. That's what came out by the end of last year. So when I then look at programs that should support culture and what they could do, I see that when you think about digitization, it's mostly about digitization of things, of objects, and it's about audience development, basically. But there is no, say, support mechanism or a thought in the direction of what can culture do combined with the digital world and algorithms to shape societies. And I still think that, and this might not even be a Creative Europe thing, that might rather be a digital agenda, DG Connect thing, where culture should be way more prominent, because together with, say, the digital world, we can really make a difference, because we can raise awareness on a public scale where research, for example, will never go to, because culture is the, say, the link between society and what research is, to really make things accessible and make thoughts accessible. So I'm asking myself, why is there still this silo of the one and the silo of the other, and why is there so little, I know there is, but very little, say, interaction?
Jutta, you might have something.
Yes, we fully agree with you. So I think when we do it in our research center, where we are, say, the DG that is providing facts, evidences to the policymaker, but we also there to think ahead and to start breaking up a little bit what you just mentioned. And the reason we brought the Art and Science program into the JRC is exactly that, to ask the right question and to query also the policies that we have. We just now have a project, for example, we started looking at values. What are the values? What are our European values? How are we distinguishing ourselves between China and the US? Particularly when you look at the digital agenda. But we heard yesterday, China obviously can be a lot more effective in implementing any kind of digital agenda, because they're just the ones that decide. But in Europe, we're not like that. Our values are different. We look at democracy part. But also, we just, the power of bringing in artists into a research center, and I may disagree a little bit on the top-down approach. I think it's important that we have a top-down approach to bring art and science, but eventually you have a bottom-up also by bringing artists, philosophers, humanities into our research work. And one project we have is, for example, on the words matter. And we would review the digital agenda and say, where's the human in the digital agenda? We've been querying, for example, we look at growth. We look at humans as a resource, and I saw it in Karen's presentation too. She talks about human resources. We're dehumanized to just a resource like money and gold or something. So I think words are really important, and that is where culture, humanities really feed into our project, and it's really important. And we start doing that And I hope that it will catch on, a little bit like Julie said, we hope that by speaking about it, eventually it will catch on and also feed into our politics. We have to get out of the silos also of our languages. We have, every program has its own language and code words, and we have to break this up, and we do think that culture artists, philosophers, humanities will help us doing that.
On the presentation of Carmen, you said in the beginning that there's always or mostly a big gap between policy documents and then what is happening, what's really happening, what we do with it. And it also takes up a little bit what Jutta has just been saying. I would like also to make a plea for the bottom-up approach, especially in policy making. And the European Music Council, we have released a document, a policy document, the European Agenda for Music. It was a long-time consultation process. And now we are wondering, we are asking ourselves, what is happening now? We have all that nice priorities and measures that we have listed in that document. Looks like this, it's very nice, it's a long process, but actually looking into it, we realize that a lot of it is already happening, first thing, and second thing, it does inspire for new activities. So I think especially if it's a bottom-up approach, if it's sector-driven policy making, it does inspire at the same time, and it also allows to understand a little bit what many nice things are already happening, and trying, I mean, that multiple funding for one project will be possible in the future. It's kind of a miracle, unbelievable news that you're presenting here. So does it mean I can, for one project, I can go for Creative Europe funding and for Erasmus Plus funding at the same time? Yes or no? That's
Yes, actually. Article 15 and 16, Article 15 is about complementarity, and Article 16, cumulative and combined funding.
Wow.
I invite you to read them.
I voted for that.
So, but perhaps I need to react because there have been two disagreements in a row on my position, on my statement. I must allow you to go for that combined funding. You will never get into the system. So what I'm saying is one approach. If you really want this to change, these things, this legal test, and the way and the actual administrative practice in any public administration, you need to go top down. That's my conviction.
Thank you very much. I think we could continue quite long time, just going back to some of the things. We ran out of time. Let's continue with the break. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for joining me.